Hello, my love story lovers. My name is Maria. I recently turned 19, and today you will hear a story about how I helped my uncle right in the tent on our hike. This is my first time telling this story, so sit back and listen to the end. You will be shocked. I'm not even sure how to start this because it still feels a little surreal. I guess introductions are a good place. I'm Mary, 19 years old, and I've always been pretty close with my dad, Daniel. He's one of those solid, dependable guys, always up for an adventure, especially if it involves the outdoors. So when he suggested a mountain hiking trip, I didn't think twice. Fresh air, some exercise, maybe even a chance to clear my head before the next semester at college. Sounded perfect. What I didn't expect was that he'd invite Leo. Leo's been my dad's friend forever. They met in their 20s, way before I was born. He used to come around a lot when I was a kid, and I remember always looking up to him. He was the cool, funny uncle type, always ready with a joke or a story. But then, when I was about 14, he moved to another city for work, and I hadn't seen him since. Until now. The moment I saw him again, it was like a switch flipped. This wasn't the same guy from my childhood memories. I mean, it was, obviously, but different. Older, more refined. He had that rugged look that only got better with age. Broad shoulders, a strong jaw, that confident way he carried himself. I'd never really noticed men like that before. Guys my age are all still figuring themselves out. But Leo, he was a man. And suddenly, I was very aware of how much I'd grown up in the last 5 years. When Dad told me Leo would be joining us, I didn't think much of it. But now, standing there at the trailhead, watching him pull his backpack on, I felt this weird mix of excitement and nerves. I hoped it didn't show. But underneath it all, I was hyper aware of him. The way he moved, the sound of his voice. Every time he glanced my way, my heart did this stupid little flutter. I kept telling myself to chill out. He was my dad's friend, for God's sake. This was ridiculous. After about 7 kilometers, we took a break. We found a clearing with a fallen log and some big rocks, perfect for sitting. Dad was rummaging through his backpack for snacks, but I was too restless to sit still. I wandered a few steps away, stretching out my arms, pretending to be fascinated by the view. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Leo pull off his shirt. I swear, my heart skipped a beat. He stood there, squeezing the sweat out of the fabric, and I was frozen. His back muscles tensed, catching the sunlight. His chest was broad, defined, and glistened slightly from the hike. It wasn't just that he was fit. It was the way he carried himself, so confident and unbothered. I didn't mean to stare. I swear I didn't. But my eyes wouldn't move. My mind was racing, and I could feel this heat rising in my face. I rolled my hair up off my neck, trying to cool down, and God help me, I bit my lip without even thinking. It was just this automatic reaction, like my body had a mind of its own. That's when it happened. Leo looked up. For a split second, our eyes locked. His expression didn't change, but there was something in his gaze that felt knowing, like he'd caught me in the act. My stomach flipped, and I looked away so fast I almost stumbled. My face burned with embarrassment. I hadn't been that ashamed in a long time. What was I thinking? He probably thought I was just some silly kid, getting flustered over nothing. I sat down on the log, forcing myself to focus on anything but him. My dad handed me a granola bar, oblivious to the storm inside my head. I forced a smile, trying to act normal. Leo didn't say anything, but I felt his eyes on me once or twice as we packed up and got ready to continue the hike. I told myself I was imagining things. It was just a moment, nothing more. But I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had shifted. I kept replaying that moment from earlier when he caught me staring. It was so stupid, and I felt like an idiot. But I couldn't shake the image of him standing there, shirtless, the way his muscles flexed as he squeezed the sweat from the fabric. Every time I thought about it, I felt this weird mix of excitement and embarrassment. I wanted to act normal, but it was like my body had its own agenda. I could feel the tension in the air, even if no one was saying anything. I focused on setting up my tent, trying to distract myself. It wasn't one of those fancy ones, just a simple one-person tent that I'd used a few times before. Leo was off to the side, struggling a bit. Then, out of nowhere, I heard him curse under his breath. I looked over, and he was standing there with a broken tent pole in his hand, frustration written all over his face. My dad walked over to see what was wrong, and after a quick inspection, they both agreed it was shot. There was no way that tent was going up tonight. Without thinking, I offered a solution. "You can stay in mine," I said. "It's not big, but there's enough room for two." My dad looked at me, a little surprised. I could see the wheels turning in his head. It was a weird situation, I guess. Me and Leo sharing a tent. But what other option was there? After a moment, he just shrugged. "If you're sure, kiddo." Leo didn't say much, just nodded and grabbed his sleeping bag. I felt a knot in my stomach. I wasn't even sure why I'd said it. I just wanted him close. We set up our sleeping bags inside the tent, side by side. It was cramped, but not uncomfortable. The sound of the forest at night was all around us. Crickets, the rustling of leaves. My dad was already in his tent, settling in for the night. We could hear him moving around, the sound of his zither closing. It felt like we were cut off from the rest of the world, just me and Leo in this tiny space. We lay there for a while, just talking. It started off simple, small talk about the hike, the weather, nothing too deep. But then it shifted. We started talking about life. He asked me about college, what I wanted to do after. I told him I wasn't sure yet, that I felt like I was still figuring things out. He listened, really listened, in a way that made me feel important. Seen. Then he asked, jokingly, if I had a fiancé waiting back home. I laughed and told him no, not even close. He seemed surprised, or maybe just curious. He told me he'd been single for the last 5 years, that he hadn't found anyone who really got him. There was something in his voice that felt vulnerable, like he wasn't just talking to pass the time. There was a pause after that. The kind of silence that feels heavy, loaded with things unsaid. My heart was pounding. I could feel the heat of his body next to mine, so close I could almost feel his breath. It was like every nerve in my body was on high alert. Without really thinking, I reached out. My hand moved almost on its own, sliding under the edge of his sleeping bag. My fingers found his waist, slipping under the fabric of his pants. He tensed. His hand shot down, grabbing mine. "What are you doing?" He whispered, his voice low, almost shocked. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just looked at him, my heart racing. I knew it was crazy, that it probably shouldn't be happening. But I couldn't stop. I tried again, more deliberate this time. My fingers moved slowly, testing the waters. For a moment, he resisted. His hand stayed on mine, like he was going to pull it away. But then something shifted. I felt his grip loosen. His breathing changed, deeper, almost ragged. I could hear it in the quiet of the tent, just a few feet away from where my dad was already snoring. Everything felt electric. Every touch, every movement. I tried to be gentle, slow, letting my fingers explore. I didn't want to rush it. I wanted to savor every second. His body responded in a way that made my heart race even more. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. It was like we both knew that talking would break the spell. All I could hear was the sound of his breathing, the rustle of fabric, my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. The moment my fingers touched his skin, everything changed. His whole body tensed, like he was holding his breath. His hand shot down, gripping mine, his fingers wrapping around my wrist. The shock in his eyes was clear even in the dim light of the tent. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it felt like it filled the space. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was racing, every beat sending a rush of heat through my body. I just looked at him, my eyes searching his, trying to convey something I couldn't put into words. There was a pause, a moment where everything hung in the balance. I could feel the warmth of his skin under my fingers, the roughness of his waistline, the tension in his muscles. He let out a low, almost involuntary sound, half a sigh, half a groan. It was quiet, but it felt like it echoed through the tent, vibrating in the air between us. I could feel his resistance crumbling, like a dam about to break. His hand slipped from my wrist, falling away, his fingers brushing against my arm as he let go. When it was over, I lay there, my heart still racing, my skin tingling. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy, loaded with everything we couldn't say. I could feel the warmth of his body next to mine, so close, almost touching. His breathing was still deep, slower now, like he was trying to steady himself. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to break the spell. I closed my eyes, the sound of his breath the last thing I heard as I drifted off. The memory of his body under my fingers burned into my mind. The next morning felt like stepping back into reality after a dream. The sun was barely up when I opened my eyes. The tent was still dim, but I could hear the rustling of leaves outside, birds calling out, the quiet sounds of the forest waking up. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I felt it. The warmth of Leo's body next to mine, his steady breathing. We were so close, our sleeping bags barely separating us. My heart started pounding again, the memories flooding back. Every touch, every sound, the way his body had responded to mine. I lay there, staring at the ceiling of the tent, trying to collect myself. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to break that fragile, intimate silence between us. Eventually, we had to get up. I could hear my dad moving around outside, unzipping his tent, stretching, getting ready for the day. I rolled over, pretending to be asleep, hoping Leo would go out first. He did. I watched as he carefully unzipped the tent, stepping out into the cool morning air. I lay there for another minute, taking deep breaths, trying to calm the storm inside me. When I finally stepped out of the tent, everything felt normal. Too normal. My dad was already making coffee, talking to Leo about the next part of the hike. It was like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I tried to act casual, joining the conversation, forcing myself to focus on the trail ahead. But every time I glanced at Leo, my mind would flash back to the night before. The way his breath had quickened, the heat of his skin under my fingers. I couldn't shake it. The hike that day was longer, more challenging. We climbed higher, the trail getting steeper. My dad led the way, his energy endless. Leo and I followed, sometimes side by side, sometimes with a little distance between us. We talked, but it was different. There was a tension in the air, this unspoken thing hanging between us. Every time our eyes met, I felt it. Like a spark, a silent reminder of what we'd done. I couldn't stop thinking about the night ahead. We had one more night in the mountains. One more night in that tiny tent. I wanted more. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't help it. The memory of his touch, the sound of his breath, it was all I could think about. By the time we set up camp that evening, the sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows through the trees. We found another clearing, similar to the night before. My dad went through the same routine, setting up his tent, organizing his gear. Leo and I set up ours again, side by side, close but not touching. It felt like there was this invisible line between us, and neither of us knew what to do about it. Dinner was quiet. We sat around the campfire, eating, talking about the day's hike. My dad was tired, but happy. He told stories, joked around, but I could barely focus. My mind was already in the tent, thinking about what might happen when the fire died down and we all went to sleep. I couldn't tell what Leo was thinking. He seemed calm, focused on my dad's stories, but every now and then his eyes would drift to me, just for a second. When it was finally time to turn in for the night, I felt like my heart was going to explode. We crawled into the tent, the same cramped space, our sleeping bags right next to each other. I could hear my dad settling into his tent, just a few feet away. It felt like the night before all over again. The tension, the silence, the heavy air between us. We lay there for a while, not saying anything. I could hear Leo's breathing, steady at first, but it changed. I knew he was awake, just like I was. He whispered, almost to himself, that we couldn't do this. His voice was quiet, but firm, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. But I was on edge. I couldn't hold back. The air was too thick with everything unsaid. I shifted closer, my body pressing against his. I could feel the heat of him through the sleeping bag, the tension in his muscles. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might break out of my chest. Without thinking, I leaned in. My lips found his, and for a moment, he didn't respond. He stayed still, like he was fighting it. But then something snapped. His lips pressed back against mine, and it was like everything we'd been holding back came rushing out. The tent was too small for anything else. I couldn't move the way I wanted to. I couldn't be on top. The only thing I could do was slide lower to his pants, my hands trailing down his body, and my head started to move slowly. He tried to resist at first, his hands gently pushing against me, but I didn't stop. I didn't want to stop. And here I was, on my dad's friend, doing what I do. This was the best feeling in my life. I could hear his breath, deep and shaky, filling the tent. His hands found my hair, his fingers tangling in it. I felt his touch on my face, soft but urgent. The sound of his breathing, the way his body responded to my head moves, it was the best thing I'd ever felt. I could feel the tension in his body, the way he was holding back, trying to stay quiet. My dad's snoring was just a few feet away, a constant reminder of where we were, but it only made everything feel more intense. When I became faster, he lost it. There were few groans from him. I was afraid of Dad awaking, but he was still snoring in his tent. The moment was intense, everything building up inside me. My body was on fire, every nerve tingling, every breath heavy. All I could think about was being closer, feeling more. I wanted more than anything to be on top, to take control, to lose myself completely in that moment. It felt like I was at some kind of peak, a point where I couldn't hold back anymore. Every part of me was craving it. But the tent, God, the tent. It was so damn small. The cramped space was killing me. Every time I tried to shift, my shoulder would bump the side, or my leg would hit the edge. There was no room to move, no way to position myself the way I wanted. I could barely turn without brushing against the nylon walls, and every sound felt like it echoed. It was frustrating, almost maddening, because all I wanted was to be on top of him, to feel his body against mine, skin on skin. I tried to adjust, shifting my weight, but it was impossible. The sleeping bags, the narrow floor, it was like being trapped. I could feel the tension in my muscles, the desperate need for more, but I had to settle for what I could do. My hands moved slowly, deliberately, trailing down his body, making the most of the limited space. It wasn't enough, though. I wanted to take over, to set the pace, to let all the energy I was feeling pour out. But every time I tried to move, to get closer, the tent reminded me of its limits. The walls pressing in, the ceiling so low, it was like a cruel joke. I let out a quiet, frustrated sigh, trying to make it work, trying to find some way to get what I needed. Leo must have felt it too, the tension, the need. His hands moved over me, gentle but firm, like he was trying to calm me down, to slow me. His fingers in my hair, stroking my face, it helped a little, but it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to be in control, to let everything out, to take him completely. The tent just wouldn't let me. It was almost like a tease, a reminder of how much I wanted it and how little I could do about it. I closed my eyes, focusing on his touch, trying to channel all that frustration into every movement. My hands explored every inch I could reach, slow, deliberate, trying to make it last. His breathing deepened, his body tensed and relaxed under my touch. It was enough for now. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about what it would be like if there was more space, if nothing was holding us back. I was at the edge, balancing between frustration and pleasure, every touch amplified by the confined space. It wasn't perfect, but it was intense, raw, and unforgettable. The next morning, everything felt heavy. Not physically, but there was this weight hanging in the air between Leo and me. We packed up the tents and gear, everything moving in a routine that felt mechanical. My dad was in good spirits, talking about how great the hike had been, how we should do this more often. Leo and I just nodded along, forcing smiles, but I could feel the tension. Every time our eyes met, it was like an unspoken conversation, something we both knew but didn't dare say out loud. The hike back down the mountain felt longer than the way up. My legs were sore, but it wasn't just from the hike. My body still felt the echoes of the night before, every touch, every sound. I kept replaying it in my head, trying to hold on to it. I didn't know when or if I'd ever feel that again. The reality of going back to normal life was sinking in, and it was like a knot in my stomach. Leo was quiet most of the way down. He walked a little ahead or a little behind, never too close. I tried not to let it bother me, but it did. I kept thinking about what he was thinking. Did he regret it? Was he trying to forget it happened? I couldn't read him, and it was driving me crazy. By the time we reached the parking lot, my dad was already making plans for another hike, talking about different trails we could try next time. Leo nodded, smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. We loaded the gear into the car, and the ride back to the city was mostly quiet. My dad fell asleep in the passenger seat, leaving me and Leo in the back, staring out our respective windows. The silence felt thick, like there was too much to say, so neither of us said anything. When we got back to the city, my dad invited Leo over for dinner the next weekend. Leo agreed, but I couldn't tell if he really wanted to or if he was just being polite. We unloaded the car, said our goodbyes, and Leo left. I watched him walk to his car, wondering if he'd look back. He didn't. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept drifting back to the hike, the tent, everything that had happened. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a message from Leo, but there was nothing. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I sent him a text, "Hey, wanna meet up?" It took a few hours for him to reply. When he did, it was short. "Yeah, tomorrow." My heart raced. We met at a small cafe downtown, one of those places that's always half empty. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a coffee in front of him. He looked up when I walked in, and for a second, everything felt like it was back to normal. Just two people meeting up. But then I sat down, and the silence settled in again. We talked about nothing at first. Small talk, work, the weather, the hike. It felt like we were avoiding the real conversation, dancing around it. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "So are we going to talk about it?" He looked down at his coffee, his fingers tapping the side of the cup. I don't know what to say. "Do you regret it?" The words felt heavy in my mouth. He shook his head, almost too quickly. "No, I don't know where we go from here." Neither did I, but I knew I didn't want it to end. "Do you want to come over?" The question hung in the air between us. He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." We didn't talk much on the way back to my place. The tension was different this time. Not awkward, just loaded, like we both knew what was coming. When we got inside, it was quiet. I dropped my keys on the counter, and we just stood there for a second, facing each other. Then he stepped closer. It wasn't rushed, not like in the tent. There was space now, no walls pressing in, no need to be quiet. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer, and everything else faded away. The rest of the night was a blur of touch and heat. It wasn't like the cramped, frustrating space of the tent. It was slow, deliberate. We had time. We had room. Every touch was different, more intense because there was nothing holding us back. His hands explored, lingering like he was memorizing every inch of me. I did the same, taking my time, letting myself get lost in him. When it was over, we lay there in the quiet, our bodies tangled together. His breathing was steady, his hand tracing lazy circles on my back. It felt real, more real than anything I'd felt in a long time.